Hey guys, welcome back to Based in May. UFC 296 is this Saturday, guys, the last pay-per-view of 2023. And this is going to be my full card predictions for the whole card, starting from the prelims all the way to the main event. And just to not post a 30-minute to 40-minute prediction video like a lot of these YouTube channels do, and I can't lie, like those videos are boring as fuck. I think those videos are only worth it if you're like a betting man, if you're a person that bets on these fights and has a parlay and you want to learn a little bit more about what other bettors are betting on and the lines to look out for, then I think those videos should be 30 to 40 minutes long. But this is not what I do on my channel. I don't bet myself. I don't bet in fights. So I'm going to try to go as quickly as possible and really talk more in depth about the fights that I know you guys want me to talk about and the fights that, are a little bit more interesting, more exciting, the big fights on this card. So let's get started with the first fight of the night. And that is Randy Brown versus Muslim Salikov. I'm going to go with Randy Brown here. And this is not a super confident pick because I think the lines are too wide. I think Randy Brown is too much of a favorite in this fight. Muslim Salikov, he's a striker. Even though he looks like a guy that would wrestle, he's primarily a striker. And he's a guy that he has low output. He's about to hit 40 years old, which I don't like. And it's kind of why I'm picking Randy Brown. Randy Brown is a very tall guy for the welterweight division. I mean, he stands in at 6 feet, 3 inches tall, long range, good kickboxer. I know he got knocked out by JDM, but I think JDM showed that he's next level when it comes to boxing. And I think Randy Brown should win this fight by decision. I'm going with Randy Brown by decision, but I do think that the line's a little bit too wide for Randy Brown. I think he's too much of a favorite. Muslim Salikov, he can be a sniper and he does have good accuracy with his strikes. He has good precision. So I'm going Randy Brown here, but it's not a super confident pick. And if you guys are betting, I probably wouldn't recommend to bet on Randy Brown at a minus 250 in my opinion. That's a little bit too much of a risk. On the card, a heavyweight bout versus Martin Buday, Shamil Gaziev. Very interesting fight. I mean, the only fight that I've seen from Shamil Gaziev is his Dana White Contender Series fight where he was able to get a rear naked choke in the first round. Martin Buday, he's had a couple fights in the UFC. I think he's a little bit mid, to be totally honest with you. He's good in the striking, but I think Shamil Gaziev is going to be superior when it comes to... Jesus, he looks scary, man. He looks weird. He doesn't have a picture here, but I think Shamil Gaziev should be able to win this fight. I mean, he has good wrestling, good boxer as well. So I think Shamil Gaziev is going to be able to get the fight to the ground, and I could see him landing like TKO punches or maybe even a submission. But I'm going with Shamil Gaziev to win this fight. But don't count on Martin Buday because he definitely has more UFC experience, has a pretty good record. I mean, 13 wins, 1 loss. But I feel like sometimes he's a little bit hesitant on the feet. And I think Shamil Gaziev, he's going to make his UFC debut here. I think he's going to come in a little bit more motivated. So I'm going to go with Shamil Gaziev to win by a finish, either a submission or a TKO. And moving on to the next fight on the prelims, a featherweight bout between Andre Fili and Lucas Almeida. Very interesting fight as well. Andre Fili, definitely the fastest striker, definitely superior when it comes to the grappling and BJJ. Lucas Almeida, he's primarily a striker, but he's not that impressive, man. And he just got fraud checked by Pat Sabatini where he was controlled on the ground and finished. Like he was submitted in the second round. Not somebody, a guy that I was super impressed with. And even though he might have a little more power than Andre Fili, I think Andre Fili will be able to hold his own in the striking department. I think he's the fastest striker. And like I said, if he wants to take this fight to the ground, he can. Now, I'm a little bit worried because sometimes Andre Fili doesn't, he doesn't go to his grappling all that much. But I think that if he starts having a little bit of problems on the feet against Lucas Almeida, he'll take the fight to the ground. And I could see this fight going, I'm going to go decision by Andre Fili. I think he'll be able to do enough on the feet and then mix it up with the grappling. I think he'll be able to win this fight. I think Andre Fili should be a clear favorite in this fight. Now moving on to a flyweight bout between Tagir Ulambeka versus Cody Durden, man. This is a great fight. Both heavy wrestler fighters, a lot of pressure from both these fighters. These guys usually take the fight to the ground. It's going to be interesting to see who's the guy here that is able to get his grappling going. I could kind of see Tagir Ulambeka maybe getting his grappling going. I think Cody Durden is a little bit better on the feet, not by much, but I think he has better boxing, better kickboxing than Tagir Ulambekov. And I'm going to go with Cody Durden, man, because I was really impressed by his last fight against Hadley. I was really impressed by his grit, and he was an underdog as well in that fight. And I'm just going with Cody Durden here. I think it's going to be a very competitive fight. I think this is also a fight that I would stay away from if you're a betting man, unless you have a really confident pick and a really good reason to pick someone in this fight. I just think this fight could go either way, in my opinion. It could go either way, and it's really going to come down to who's going to be able to get his grappling going. I think Cody Durden just showed to have a little bit more grit in his last fight, so I'm going to go Cody Durden to win this fight by decision. Now, moving on to the last fight of the early prelims, we got Alonso Menifeld versus Dustin Jacoby. Alonso Menifeld is coming off that win against Jimmy Crute, where he was able to finish him, I believe, in the second round, and then prior to that, it was a draw. Dustin Jacoby, had a controversial decision against Khalil Roundtree, where I thought he personally won the fight, was able to bounce back, get a unanimous decision over this dude. I don't want to pronounce his name. And this other dude with this weird ass name as well. And Dustin Jacoby, guys, he's a pretty good technical kickboxer. He's really good on the feet. And even though I think Alonso Menifeld might have a little bit more power, I think Dustin Jacoby is just a lot more skilled than Alonso Menifeld. And Alonso Menifeld, he's not like this grappler. I mean, he's just a very strong guy with a lot of power in his hands. But I think Dustin Jacoby is going to be able to piece him up with his kickboxing, with the leg kick. So I'm going to go Dustin Jacoby to get a decision. I would not be surprised if Dustin Jacoby gets a finish here. I mean, Alonso Menifeld, obviously he has the puncher's chance to knock out Dustin Jacoby, but I think Dustin Jacoby should be a clear favorite. He clearly is a clear favorite. So I'm going to go with Dustin Jacoby to win this fight. Now, the first fight of the prelims, we have a mid-off between Casey O'Neill and Ariane Lipski. And Casey O'Neill might be one of the most overrated female fighters of all time, man. She's absolutely mid. Her last loss against Jennifer Maia, she looked absolutely horrific. She looks terrible on the feet. I know she's more of a grappler, and even though Ariane Lipski, she's nothing too special. I think she is improving. She's a little bit more well-rounded, and I think she's faster on the feet. But I am worried that if Ariane Lipski gets taken down, that Casey O'Neill's top control is going to be too much for her. So this is also a fight that I would kind of stay away from if you're a betting man. I think this is, it's women MMA. Anything could happen. I mean, in any of these fights, anything could happen. But, I'm just a big Casey O'Neill hater. And I think she's really mid. So I'm going to go with Ariane Lipski to win this fight by decision. Not a fight that I would bet on, but I just think Casey O'Neill got fraud checking her last fight. And even her fights before the Jennifer Maia fight, Modafferi, like she looked bad on the feet. I mean, she won a split decision and then was able to get a TKO over Valentina Shevchenko's sister, but she's mid as hell, man. She's absolutely terrible. Like I said, it's not like Casey O'Neill is beating really top talent in the women's divisions and stuff like that. So I think she's absolutely mid, very overrated. And I'm going to go with Ariane Lipski to win this fight by decision, going with the underdog here. Now, moving on to a very interesting fight, and a fight that I've kind of been going back and forth. Cody Garbrandt versus Brian Kelleher. And this is also like one of those fights like the Paddy Pimblett versus Tony Ferguson, where I think Cody Garbrandt is way more skilled than Brian Kelleher. Brian Kelleher is clearly a journeyman. I mean, look at his wins, 24 wins, 14 losses. But Brian Kelleher, he tends to struggle against wrestlers. I mean, he got submitted by Umar Nurmagomedov, and then he got submitted by Mario Batista as well in the first round. So Brian Kelleher, he tends to struggle with these wrestlers, with these guys that have submission ability, and Cody Garbrandt isn't really one of those guys. I mean, he could definitely get a takedown here, but Cody Garbrandt, he's not going to be threatening you with submissions. Cody Garbrandt is a boxer, primarily a boxer. The thing that makes it scary is that Cody Garbrandt, I mean, everybody knows this, he's really chinny. He's really chinny, and even though he's coming off his win against Trevin Jones, he looked very hesitant on the feet, man. He looked very hesitant. It wasn't like a great performance. It looked like he was just there to win and not get hurt instead of really putting like a great performance. And it just didn't give me too much confidence that Cody Garbrandt was back in any form of like any way. And it was like, I really can't pick him here. But Brian Kelleher, I mean, he's not good, man. He's not good. He's really mid. He's not a guy that has knockout power. But like, I don't really trust Cody Garbrandt's chin. But I'm going to pick Cody Garbrandt, guys. I'm going to pick Cody Garbrandt. Risky pick here because I just think he's the more skilled guy on the feet. And I don't think Brian Kelleher has a lot of power here. even though I do think that Brian Kelleher is going to take more risk than Trevin Jones, and maybe he's able to catch Cody Garbrandt, I'm going to go with Cody Garbrandt. I'm hoping he bounces back. Very low confident pick as well. But I just think Cody Garbrandt is a lot more skilled than Brian Kelleher. And Brian Kelleher is a journeyman, not a guy that I think too highly of. And I think the UFC gave this matchup to Cody Garbrandt to kind of bounce back and get a win here. But it all depends, man. It all depends if Cody Garbrandt goes into this fight focused or if he has a lot of things going on outside the cage, and I'm going to be less confident. But he put a terrible performance against Trevin Jones. I know he won that fight, but man, he looks so hesitant, so tentative on the feet. Clearly, he's worried about getting hurt. And I would not be surprised if Brian Kelleher, knocks him out, to be totally honest with you. But I'm going with Cody Garbrandt to win a decision. I'm going to be rooting hard for Cody Garbrandt, man. I'm a big fan of this guy. And it's just so sad the career fallout that he's had after those TJ Dillashaw fights. And I hope that he's able to bounce back. Very low confident pick. Like I said, it's kind of hard to trust Cody Garbrandt at this point in his career, and it's hard to kind of trust that chin. But I'm gonna pick him in this fight to win this fight because I don't rate Brian Kelleher too highly. I mean, like I said, he got submitted by Mauro Batista, got submitted by Umar Nurmagomedov, won in decision against Kroom. This isn't a guy that's beating top contenders. You know what I'm saying? And like, I'm gonna go with Cody Garbrandt to win a decision here. Moving on. Oh my God, what is happening with my computer? Moving on to Renan Aldana versus Carl Rosa. Probably the worst fight on the prelims, to be totally honest. Not a fight I really care about. Irene Aldana is coming off the terrible performance against Amanda Nunes where she did not show up. She was super scared of Amanda Nunes. Put one of the worst title fight performances I have ever seen. Like, surely she did not put it on the line against Amanda Nunes. Was very tentative. Was going out there and shadow boxing against Amanda Nunes. Absolutely did nothing. Very disappointed in Irene Aldana's performance. I thought she was going to go into that fight a little bit more motivated, a little bit more hungry, especially after her teammate Alexa Grasso was able to defeat Valentina Shevchenko. I thought she was going to go into that fight and really bring the fight to Amanda Nunes, and she really didn't show that. But I still think she's going to win this fight. I still think she's going to win this fight because she's a top fighter. This is women MMA. She has good boxing, not crazy power. She could definitely go to the grappling, great BJJ skills. And I think she's better than Carol Rosa. I mean, Carol Rosa is very mid in my opinion, not a great fighter, very pressure fighter, but I just think the technique and the striking of Ren Aldana is going to give her problems. And I think Aldana is just going to pretty much jab her at range, kind of win this fight at range. And I just see her winning a boring ass decision. That is kind of my prediction for this fight. There's not too much to talk about there. Now, no, I can't open it up. Guys, this has been happening to me. Okay. Well, I guess I'll just talk about it like this. You can't really see the tail of the tape, but Josh Emmett versus Bryce Mitchell. Now, this is where the card gets really good in my opinion. This is a great fight on the card. Josh Emmett was supposed to fight Giga Chikadze, a striker, but Giga Chikadze pulled out due to a groin injury. Josh Emmett versus Giga Chikadze was going to be a very interesting fight. Striker versus striker. I most likely was going to pick Giga Chikadze to win that fight just because of all the damage that Josh Emmett has taken in his career. But Bryce Mitchell stepping in. Bryce Mitchell, primarily a grappler. He has underrated striking. Like, he could definitely hurt you on the feet. Like, I feel like some people underrate Bryce Mitchell's ability. I mean, he did drop Edson Barbosa. And then he was even able to land a couple of combinations on Ilia Topuria. I know that was a fight that he got pretty much battered on. But it wasn't like he wasn't having any striking success against Ilia Topuria. He had a little bit of there. Obviously, Topuria is a superior striker to Bryce Mitchell. Now, the one thing that makes this fight hard to pick for me is that Josh Emmett is very short. Bryce Mitchell, I believe he's like 5'9". Let me see if they show his height here. Let me see. I believe Bryce Mitchell is like 5'9" or 5'10", and Josh Emmett is like 5'6". So Bryce Mitchell has a height advantage. And I think the fact that Josh Emmett is a lot shorter than him might be a little bit harder to get the takedowns on Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett isn't really a guy that gets taken down a lot. And because he's shorter, his lower center of gravity might help him defend the takedowns against Bryce Mitchell. And I think on the feet, I mean, even though Josh Emmett is pretty one-dimensional when it comes to striking, I mean, he doesn't throw a lot of leg kicks, which might help him in this fight, not throwing leg kicks against somebody like Bryce Mitchell who might be able to catch a leg or something like that. Josh Emmett clearly the harder hitter here, and he throws big swinging hooks right overhands. He loves to throw that right overhand. And like I said, he's taking a lot of damage. Both these guys lost to Ilia Topuria in a very embarrassing way. Probably Bryce Mitchell lost worse because he actually got finished. But Josh Emmett pretty much got dominated from pillar to post in that fight. So, man, like I really haven't made a pick for this fight. I was hoping that as I discuss this fight in this video, I would be able to get maybe like, okay, I'm going to choose this side. And I think that, man, this is a hard fight. I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell. And the reason I'm going with Bryce Mitchell is because I think he'll have the range down. And even though he has to watch out because Josh Emmett could absolutely knock him out, I think Josh Emmett has taken a lot of damage. He's fought 2 times this year already. He's getting a lot older. Personally, I thought he had already retired. So I was surprised that he was going to fight in this card. I thought the guy had already retired after Ilia Topuria, but you know, clearly he's going down the Tony Ferguson route. And I think even though Bryce Mitchell, you know, just had a controversial win against Dan Ige where I thought he might have lost that fight, to be totally honest with you. I mean, Bryce Mitchell is pretty durable. You know what I'm saying? I think Bryce Mitchell will be able to take some of the strikes from Josh Emmett. And I will not be surprised if Bryce Mitchell also has a success in the striking department. And I think that if Bryce Mitchell is able to get Josh Emmett down, he will be able to find a submission here. But I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell by decision. I think he'll be able to do enough with his grappling, maybe not get a finish. And I think he'll be able to survive on the feet. And the fact that he's taller than Josh Emmett might help him like be able to stand his own in the striking department. And like I said, I just think Bryce Mitchell is pretty durable. Josh Emmett is also pretty durable on the feet. But I just think Josh Emmett has taken more, I don't know actually, because Bryce Mitchell actually took a beating also by Dan Ige. He did take a lot of damage in this fight, man. This is also a very tough fight to pick, but I'm going to go with Bryce Mitchell to win this fight by submission or a decision. I'm hoping Bryce Mitchell gets it done, but I would not be surprised if Josh Emmett is able to defend the takedowns because he does have good takedown defense and he lands a lot of, right overhands on Bryce Mitchell and just, beats him up, if not gets a finish. So this is also a very hard fight. I would, if you're a betting man, I would stay away from this fight as well. Not a good fight to bet on because Bryce Mitchell stepping in on short notice. The one thing I think a lot of people have mentioned is that Josh Emmett was preparing for a striker in this fight because he was preparing for Giga Juketsi, and now he's being thrown a grappler like Bryce Mitchell, who's very good. You know, who knows how Josh Emmett is gonna do there, but I don't know how in shape Bryce Mitchell is going into this fight. I'm guessing that he's in shape for him to take this fight on short notice like this. Unless he wants money like the Ilia Topuria fight where he needs money, he needs to take a fight. I hope that's not the case here. But I'm going with am I gonna switch? I feel like switching, guys. I'm going Bryce Mitchell. But I'm not gonna put a method of winning because I'm not too confident on that. But low confidence Bryce Mitchell pick. I'm going with Bryce Mitchell just because he's based. He has the Bible, he's going to be praying coming into this fight. So I'm going with Bryce Mitchell to win this fight. Now moving on to the main card. And before I get started with the main card, let's see if it works now. Oh, wow. What happened to the webpage? Let me refresh it. Bruh. My internet went out. No, my internet went out. Main card. Sorry. There was a technical issue. Right when I was about to start my main card predictions, the internet went out and I had to refresh the page and restart it, guys. So if there's a weird edit here, you guys know why. Now let's start off the main card between Ian Machado Gary, the cuck, versus Vicente Luque, the baseman himself, who just gave his life to Jesus Christ. Now let's talk about the fight because I think this is a very interesting fight. I think Ian Gary is going to be the clear favorite here, and even though Vicente Luque, he's not that old. I believe he's 32 years old. I mean, he's been through a lot of fights, a lot of wars. I mean, he's coming off that win against RDA. Where it was a bunch of grappling, a bunch of clinch fest and stuff like that. It wasn't like it was this impressive win for Vicente Luque. It was a good bounce back, especially because prior to his RDA fight, he lost to Jeff Neal in a very brutal fashion where he got finished. Prior to that, he got dominated by Bilal Muhammad. Prior to that, he did have a win against Michael Chiesa where he was able to get a submission, and then he was also able to get a submission over Tyron Woodley. But Vicente Luque has always struggled with these rangy strikers. And I think he's just taking a lot of damage in his career. He did suffer from a brain injury a couple fights ago. And I want to pick Vicente Luque because I'm such an Ian Gary hater. And I don't like this guy. Even prior to this whole wipe controversy, I was an Ian Gary hater. Like, go back on my channel, go back to UFC 292. I hated the why. I hated the the why. I hated the way Ian Gary handled himself against Neil Magny, and the fact that he started all this, this trash talk, but not like fun trash talk, like really personal trash talk against Neil Magny, and pretty much trying to paint him as this terrible father. I just thought was very uncalled for, especially against someone like Neil Magny, man. Like, do that to Colby Covington, do that to some of these other trash talkers, but you're really gonna do that to Neil Magny? I just thought it was really uncalled for. He tried to make this spin of he's this morally righteous guy, and Ian Gary has shown that he's a cuck. There's all this controversy, and it's gonna be interesting to see the mindset that Ian Gary goes into this fight. He might fight a little bit more aggressive. It might make him sharper, and ultimately, guys, I am going with Ian Gary. But I think Vicente Luque is going to show to be a little bit more durable than people expect. I'm a little bit worried. I'm a little bit worried because Vicente Luque has taken a lot of damage in his career. And I just think Ian Gary, he's okay with his hands. I mean, Vicente Luque needs to like make this a boring fight. He needs to clinch up, close the distance on Ian Gary. But Ian Gary does have good footwork, so I could see Vicente Luque struggling to close the distance on Ian Gary. But ultimately, I think Ian Gary is going to be able to win this fight on the scorecards. I don't really see Ian Gary being able to finish Vicente Luque unless he catches him with a head kick or something like that, or even a body kick. But I think when it comes to his hands, I think that Vicente Luque might have a little bit more power than Ian Gary. Even though Ian Gary is the more technical kickboxer, I am going to go with Ian Gary. And I'm going to be very happy if Vicente Luque proves us all wrong and he finishes Ian Gary. Like, I think all the MMA fans, we're all going to be excited. We're going to be hyped as hell. I just don't see it here. I don't see it here. Objectively speaking, Ian Gary should win this fight, and it's a good step up for Ian Gary. He's able to win this fight against Vicente Luque in a very dominant fashion. Like, if it's a close fight, I think it's gonna be kind of a loss for Ian Gary because a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, he's not that good. He's fighting a Vicente Luque who's clearly on the decline. Clearly, this is a guy that's not on his prime anymore. Has taken a lot of damage in his career, even though he's young. Vicente Luque has taken a lot of damage. He was dropped by Stephen Thompson as well. Stephen Thompson, even though Stephen Thompson and Ian Gary, they're both tall, kind of rangy strikers. Maybe one's a karate, one's more of a technical kickboxer. Kind of similar in a way, and we saw that Stephen Thompson was able to beat Vicente Luque. So I'm going to go with Ian Gary to win this fight by a decision. Now, moving on to this lightweight bout that nobody asked for, Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. And I can't lie, guys, I see a lot of you picking Tony Ferguson, and I'm very surprised. I feel like you guys have not learned. I feel like you guys have not learned that Tony Ferguson is clearly done, man. He's as washed as it gets. Like, if there's a word that means the same thing as washed, but stronger, a stronger word, that is Tony Ferguson right here. He's the definition of washed, if not more. And this is kind of like, I think he's even more washed than Cody Garbrandt. And even though Tony Ferguson has been losing to really good guys, and I know that a lot of people are making the argument, well, look who Tony Ferguson is losing to. He's losing to, obviously, the Justin Gaethje, which was a career changer. He lost to Charles Oliveira, pretty dominantly. Then he lost dominantly to Dariush, where he got out grappled for 3 rounds. And then after that, he took some time off, came back against Michael Chandler, had a good first round. Oh, why is my camera so high? Sorry, guys. He had a good first round against Michael Chandler, was able to drop Michael Chandler with a jab, I believe. And then he got knocked out brutally in the second round. And I think that even that knockout kind of changed him as well. Like, we all knew that after the Justin Gaethje, he was different. But I even feel that he came back even worse after the Michael Chandler front kick KO. He came back against Nate Diaz and put one of the worst performances I've ever seen in an MMA fight. Tony Ferguson looked absolutely terrible. I did pick Nate Diaz to win that fight because I did not trust Tony Ferguson. But when it comes to the skill set, Tony Ferguson probably should have won that fight. And he lost badly. He got finished, submitted by Nate Diaz. You're getting submitted by Nate Diaz, man. Like, come on, bro. Like, come on. And then he came back against Bobby Green. You know, that was kind of a hard fight stylistically because Bobby Green is a good kickboxer, has really good boxing. And even though Tony Ferguson had moments, he had exchanges where he looked good. If you go back and rewatch that fight, Bobby Green was outstriking him like badly. And then Bobby Green was able to submit Tony Ferguson. If you're getting submitted by Bobby Green, I can't pick you in a fight. I can't pick you in a fight against anybody in the UFC. And even though Paddy Pimblett is a bum, and we're all aware that he lost to Jared Gordon, I think he's a little bit underrated. No, he's fairly rated. He's fairly rated, but he's a little bit underrated in this matchup in the sense that I think he's a younger guy. I think he's going to be the more durable guy. Oh, wow. Tony Ferguson is taller. I don't know why I thought Paddy Pimblett was taller. And even though Tony Ferguson has better striking than Paddy Pimblett, I think Paddy Pimblett is going to be a lot more explosive in this fight. And I could just see Paddy Pimblett being a little bit more durable. And I just think that Tony Ferguson doesn't have enough output to really make it a tough fight for Paddy Pimblett. Now, I know that Tony Ferguson has been training with David Goggins, which I think makes absolutely no sense, guys. It makes no sense. And maybe he comes into this fight more motivated. He's going to come in shape for sure. But the reason why Tony Ferguson has been struggling in his past fights is not because he's coming into this fight into his fights out of shape. It's because his timing isn't as good. His fundamentals aren't as good. I mean, he's struggling in the grappling and the striking. He doesn't look as good. Not enough output, not enough confidence. And maybe David Goggins helps him in that way. But Tony Ferguson needs to go back to his MMA fundamentals. And I don't know if his issue was necessarily cardio-wise or endurance-wise. So I don't know how much of him training with David Goggins is going to come into play here. I mean, he's definitely going to have the better cardio out of the two. And maybe if Tony Ferguson is able to get some momentum in this fight and kind of grow into the fight, and maybe he's able to beat Paddy Pimblett in the striking, I could see Tony Ferguson maybe winning a decision here. But I'm going with Paddy Pimblett, guys. I'm going with Paddy Pimblett because I just think he's a younger fighter. He's going to come into this fight hungry. He knows that, you know, the entire world was criticizing him because of his last performance. And I do think that Paddy Pimblett is a bit overhated. Now, I like Paddy Pimblett. I think I didn't like the way he handled that Jared Gordon loss because instead of that fight, I mean, fighters are delusional, guys. Fighters are absolutely delusional. They're always going to think they won the fight. But we just didn't like the way Paddy Pimblett handled himself after the Jared Gordon fight. Instead of being like, you know what, it was a close fight. I thought I edged it out, but I need to go back and rewatch it. He was like, no, I clearly won the fight. I clearly won that fight. You know what I'm saying? He was very aggressive in his response, and I think that kind of turns some people off. And the fact that is that Paddy Pimblett isn't this amazing fighter. He's never going to be a top lightweight. You know, I think the UFC is pushing him because they think he's an amazing character. I don't think that guy's that entertaining. If he had an American accent, he'd just be a typical fighter. But because he has a British accent, I guess he's kind of funny. But I'm going to pick him to win this fight. But like I said, same thing as the Ian Gary fight. If Tony Ferguson is able to get a win here, I'm going to be so happy. But objectively speaking, I just think Tony Ferguson is done, guys. He's absolutely done. He probably should retire 3 fights ago. And the fact that he hasn't just concerns me. And I think the UFC gave this matchup to Paddy because they think that this is a matchup that Paddy can win. It's a big name because Tony Ferguson is still a very recognizable name. The hardcore MMA fans, we know that Tony Ferguson is completely washed. And even though I do think that Paddy Pimblett is a step down in competition in terms of the guys that Tony Ferguson has been fighting, I just don't like how Tony Ferguson has been looking. But I do think this fight is going to be competitive, but I just don't trust Tony Ferguson here. I'm going Paddy Pimblett to win by submission. That's my prediction for this fight. Now moving on to Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson. Very interesting fight as well. Not a fight that's going to be super competitive. You know, I feel like once we got into the main card, there's like clear favorites here. Look, Ian Gary minus 360, Paddy Pimblett minus 340, and the biggest favorite on the card has to be Shavkat Rakhmonov, man. And I really think this guy is something special. And the secret is out that Shavkat Rakhmonov is as good as it gets. He has 17 wins. Half of those wins are by submission. The other half are by knockout. You know, he's coming off his submission win over Jeff Neal, and I feel like a lot of people thought that fight was more competitive than it actually was on rewatch. Shavkat Rakhmonov was in control of that fight. You know, Jeff Neal had moments where he was able to land punches on Shavkat Rakhmonov, but Shavkat showed to have a great chin. And if you guys stop to actually think about it, Jeff Neal is a harder matchup for Shavkat Rakhmonov than Stephen Thompson is. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you actually think about it, because Jeff Neal has great takedown defense, very strong, great boxing, a lot of power. And Shavkat Rakhmonov made him look easy, guys. He made him look easy. Stephen Thompson, a guy that's 40 years old, very rangy striker. Stephen Thompson is not that strong. He tends to struggle with wrestlers. I mean, he lost to Gilbert Burns. You know, he lost to Bilal Muhammad pretty clearly. And I think Shavkat Rakhmonov, he can choose the way he wants to fight. He can choose the way he wants to win this fight. He can make it a boring clinch fest, take down Stephen Thompson. He could also, you know, I think he could also beat Stephen Thompson in the striking and he's able to pressure forward, not give him too much distance. And I think that Stephen Thompson is just going to have problems with Shavkat Rakhmonov, man. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is the truth. He's at a different level. You know, you could make the argument that Shavkat Rakhmonov is a champion of the welterweight division. I think this guy is that good, and I don't see him getting fraud check in this fight. I don't think Stephen Thompson has it anymore. And even though he's coming off that win against Kevin Holland, like, think about it. He won that fight against Kevin Holland because Kevin Holland has terrible fight IQ, and he didn't take the fight to the ground. He could have taken down Stephen Thompson. I think at some point he might have taken down Stephen Thompson, but he decided to play to the game of Stephen Thompson, have this striking match to please the fans, which, you know, it was a great fight, but I think Kevin Holland could have won that fight, and I just think Stephen Thompson doesn't have it anymore, and he's going against a really, really dangerous contender, Shavkat Rakhmonov. I think Shavkat's going to finish him. I think Shavkat's probably going to hurt him on the feet and then maybe get a submission. But I'm going to go with Shavkat Rakhmonov by TKO. Look, Stephen Thompson isn't a guy that really gets submitted, but I would not be surprised if Stephen Thompson gets submitted in this fight. I think he's going to retire after this fight. I just think Shavkat Rakhmonov has a lot of power, has a great chin, great cardio. His fight IQ is nor here nor there, but I think he'll be good enough to beat Stephen Thompson, even if he wants to strike with Stephen Thompson, because Stephen Thompson doesn't have a lot of power. And I think Shavkat Rakhmonov, great in the clinch, nasty elbows, nasty knees, man. Shavkat Rakhmonov throws nasty knees. He was landing so many knees on Jeff Neal. And I think he's going to make light work of Stephen Thompson. I think he's going to finish him either in the first or second round. I'm going to go with a submission win by Shavkat Rakhmonov. I would not be surprised if he gets a TKO, but definitely a finish. I would definitely bet on a Shavkat Rakhmonov. He's probably too big of a favorite for it to be worth it, but maybe you should bet on whether you think it's a submission or a knockout. I'm leaning knockout, actually. I'm gonna go knockout. I think Shavkat Rakhmonov is going to win that fight by knockout. And there's that. Now, moving on to the co-main event of the night, Alexander Pantoja versus Brandon Royval, an incredible fight. And I just rewatched their first fight. And even though Brandon Royval was overwhelming Pantoja with the striking, he wasn't hurting him bad enough for me to pick him. You know what I'm saying? Because Alexander Pantoja, once he got tired of the striking, he went to his grappling and was able to take Brandon Royval with ease, man. Brandon Royval has no takedown. He almost wants to be taken down so he could play jiu-jitsu. And even though on the feet, you know, he is taller than Alexander Pantoja, he doesn't have enough power, in my opinion, to really threat Pantoja. And I wanted to pick Royval in this fight because I just felt like Pantoja, you know, he's coming off a war against Brandon Moreno. That was a bad war. I mean, it was one of the best fights of the year, but he did take a lot of punishment in that fight. So I was like, man, maybe this is kind of a quick turnaround, man. Because I honestly did not expect Pantoja to fight this year, especially after that war against Brandon Moreno. So I am a little bit skeptical. Like, I would not be surprised if Royval is able to do something on the feet. I think if Royval wins, it'll be by knockout. But I think Pantoja has power as well. And I think if it starts to get a bit dicey on the feet, Pantoja can quickly go to the grappling and just dominate him there for 5 rounds if he wants to. I don't think this fight is going the distance, but I'm going to go with Pantoja to win this fight. Low confident pick because I just have a weird feeling that Royval is gonna get it done in this fight. But objectively speaking, in terms of like putting the skills together, Brandon Royval hasn't improved all that much since that first fight. You know what I'm saying? And Pantoja, he's good enough to beat him again, in my opinion. His grappling is so good. We saw that against Brandon Moreno. He has great BJJ skills. These guys are both very aggressive fighters. This is going to be a fight of the night for sure, as long as it lasts. It's going to be a great fight. Both of these guys are very aggressive, very explosive. Brandon Royval has a kill or be killed kind of mindset, which makes it very entertaining. He looks like Nate Diaz. He's built like Nate Diaz. But I'm going with Pantoja to win this fight by submission. I think he's going to be able to submit him again. But I would not be surprised if Royval gets it done on the feet. But like I said, I think if it starts to get too overwhelming for Pantoja on the feet, I could see him getting the fight to the ground and being able to either submit Brandon Royval or control him on the ground. You know what I'm saying? And we've seen that Pantoja, very gritty fighter, very durable. And I just think that Brandon Royval, as explosive as he is, he doesn't have like the power, even though he's coming off that knee KO over Nicolas against Nicolau. I just think Alexander Pantoja is a different level of flyweight in my opinion. I think Pantoja is going to win this fight, and still I'm going to go with submission for Alexander Pantoja, but I will not be surprised if Brandon Royval wins this fight. I feel like a lot of people are counting him out. I think he's going to be able to do something on the feet. He has a chance on the feet, and if he's improved, he has great scrambles. Great scrambles. Like the scrambles in this fight are going to be absolutely amazing. Just as in the first fight was pretty competitive, but in the second round, Pantoja was able to, get his grappling going, take him down, and then get that submission win. I believe it was a rear naked choke. Man, I'm feeling the underdog. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying all these things, right? I'm saying like Pantoja, but there's something in me saying that Royval might win this fight. Should I go with the underdog? Man, fuck it. It's my channel. I could pick whoever I want. No, I have to go with Pantoja, guys. I'm going with Pantoja to win this fight by a TKO or a submission. I just think he's too well-rounded, and he has a grappling in his back pocket. And even though Royval is not a fish out of water on the ground, like he has good jiu-jitsu skills, and he could definitely go for a leg lock or go for some sort of submission. I think Pantoja is just too well-rounded now. But I am a little bit worried that Pantoja might be making a quick turnaround because he did have a war with Brandon Moreno. You know what I'm saying? That's a life-changing war in my opinion. Even though he won that fight, he did get clipped a lot. He did get hit a lot by Brandon Moreno. And if he's, I don't know, man. Something in me wants to pick Brandon Royval, but I think Pantoja is a logical pick here. So I'm going to go with Pantoja to win this fight. Now, moving on to the main event of the evening. Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. Very interesting fight as well. The main event of the evening, Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. And I can't lie, I'm surprised by the discourse about this fight. It's very interesting to see, man. A lot of people are picking Colby Covington. And I think, even though I'm not picking Colby Covington to win this fight, I think the people that are picking Colby Covington are making good arguments. Because even though I'm picking Leon Edwards, I still have a lot of questions about Leon Edwards. Like, we know he's a technical striker. I just feel like Leon Edwards lacks a little bit of grit. I think he has suspicious cardio. And even in the fights where he's winning and dominating, like the Nate Diaz fight, he tends to coast and he puts his foot off the gas. And I don't like that against someone like Colby Covington. Now, the reason why I'm going with Leon Edwards is because I think he's a lot bigger than Colby Covington. I think he's going to be a lot stronger. And we saw in the Kamaru Usman trilogy that he was able to make adjustments in the wrestling and the takedown defense department. And even though he did cheat a lot, he fucking cheated a shit ton. Leon Edwards is a fucking cheater. He grabbed the cage, he fucking grabbed the cage. Like, he didn't even hide it. He just grabbed it. He grabbed Kamaru Usman's glove. 2 nut shots. I think that's what Kobe Covington needs to be worried about Leon Edwards cheating in this fight. But besides all those little things, because those little things matter, man, because Kamaru Usman was gonna take him down in that trilogy, but they put the fight back on the feet, and they took a point away from Leon Edwards, where I think they should have given the position back to Kamaru Usman because he was gonna take down Leon Edwards. But the thing about Usman compared to Colby Covington, because I've seen a lot of people compare them in the sense that people are saying, well, Colby Covington is just different cardio, different than Kamaru Usman, and that's true. But those same people are not taking into account the Kamaru Usman is stronger than Colby Covington, and even though he might not be as technical with his wrestling and his chain wrestling as Colby Covington, he is stronger than Colby Covington, and he is a little bit bigger than Colby Covington in terms of size. Maybe they're about the same height, but I do think he's stronger than Colby Covington, which kind of helped him against Leon Edwards, being able to outmuscle him and take him down. And I just don't know if Colby Covington is going to be able to do the same, even though he's a little bit technically better. Now, what I will say, I feel like we're going to know who wins this fight by like the first two rounds. You know what I'm saying? By the first two rounds, maybe Leon Edwards knocks him out in the first or second. Who the fuck knows? It's MMA. But if there's not a finish, we're going to know by the first two rounds. If Leon Edwards is able to establish the range in those first two rounds, leg kick Colby Covington, a lot of body kicks, a lot of head kicks, to get him kind of scared. Like, oh, he needs to be worried about the head kicks as well. A lot of leg kicks, moving outside the cage, being too fast for Colby Covington. Colby Covington struggling to close the distance. I think Leon Edwards is going to win easy. Now, if Colby Covington is able to have success in the first couple of rounds, Leon Edwards is in for a bad night, man. Because if Colby Covington has success in the first two rounds, Leon Edwards is going to be so gassed by the fourth or fifth. I don't know if he's going to be able to pull a finish out of his ass. You know what I'm saying? So you see how like it's a very 50-50 fight. So when it comes to the stylistic fight, it's a very close fight. 50-50 fight. Flip a coin. So I have to take into consideration the outside factors here. And Leon Edwards is the younger fighter. He's been more active. And even though that second Usman fight, he looked absolutely terrible, was getting absolutely dominated, and was able to pull that head kick out of his ass, I'm going to judge him based on the trilogy. And going based on the trilogy, he did make adjustments, landed good straight left hands on Kamaru Usman, landed a good knee. And Colby Covington is also one of those fighters who tends to duck and like throw overhands. And I could see on Leon Edwards clinching up, grabbing his head, landing a knee, an elbow. Leon Edwards is dangerous in close quarter combat. But I'm a little bit worried here as somebody who's picking Leon Edwards, because I feel like Leon Edwards is a fighter that doesn't like to be pressured. And I don't know how he's going to do against Colby Covington, man. I don't know how he's going to do against Colby Covington. But I think Leon Edwards has better grappling than Colby Covington has striking. And ultimately, I am going to go with Leon Edwards. I would not be surprised if he goes to a decision, but I think he'll be able to find a finish somehow. Like, I could see the fight playing out as like Colby Covington is winning the round. And, he's holding Leon Edwards against the cage. Leon Edwards is just having a hard time, removing Colby Covington, getting up and stuff. He gets up, pushes Colby Covington, and then lands like an elbow or a straight left hand or something like that, like something very quick that stuns Colby Covington, and then he's able to like land strikes on him and land ground and pound shots. Because even though Jorge Masvidal dropped him, Jorge Masvidal was not able to capitalize because he was so gassed. You know what I'm saying? And if Leon Edwards is not as gassed, even though he might be struggling against Colby Covington, I just see a scenario where Colby Covington gets dropped. And even if the people that are picking Colby, I just don't see how you don't see a scenario where Colby gets dropped at some point. And a lot of people are going to say, well, Leon Edwards, he's a decision king. He doesn't have any power. He doesn't have a lot of power, but I think he still has enough power to hurt Colby Covington on the feet. He is a sniper, and I could just see him sniping Colby Covington at some point, even if he's losing the fight, which makes it very dangerous if you're picking Colby Covington. Because even if Colby Covington is winning the rounds, you're going to be shitting yourself. You're going to be like, man, I can't wait for this fight to end. But I'm going to go with Leon Edwards to win this fight. I think he should win this fight. I think he's younger, making more improvements. Colby Covington hasn't fought in 2 years. but I am a little bit worried. And he needs to make sure that he comes into this fight in shape. He has a great game plan, and Leon Edwards cannot be on the back foot. He needs to be pressuring Colby Covington from round one, because if he lets Colby Covington get momentum, it's going to be a hard night. It's going to be a rough night. He needs to get the respect of Colby Covington on the feet. He needs to make Colby Covington feel like, hey, man, you could get fucking hurt on the feet if you're not careful with me. You know what I'm saying? I could fucking snipe you. So I'm going to go with Leon Edwards to win this fight. And if you think about it, all the strikers have been winning lately. Sean Strickland, Sean O'Malley. I'm going to go with Leon Edwards to win this fight, guys. I am going with Leon Edwards. I'm going to be very happy if Colby Covington wins this fight. I mean, I'm going to be mad because then that means that I actually do have a fucking pay-per-view curse. But I do want Colby Covington to be champion. But objectively speaking, you have to go with Leon Edwards to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to find the knockout at some point in the later rounds or get a decision. So ultimately, I am going to go with Leon Edwards, guys. And those are my predictions for UFC 296. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know your predictions for UFC 296, guys. Make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll probably be posting another video this week, probably about the press conference. So stay tuned for that, guys. Please make sure to like and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.